If you've ever seen one of my videos where I'm using a small detail blending brush to fill in stencils, you know that I love the Waffle Flower shader brushes. I feel like they work really well, they're very smooth, they're easy to hold, they're just a great brush. So I was so excited to learn that they now come in a rainbow of colors. Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca Keppel, and in today's video, I'll show you these new shader brushes, which not only look gorgeous on your desk, but also make it really easy to spot which color you are choosing from when you're using your brushes. So let's take a look at those shader brushes, and I'll show you some of the Better Together release from Waffle Flower this month. And for those of you that love the Postage Collage stencils, there's a new stencil set. Here I have 2 packs of the Waffle Flower Shader Plus One double-ended shader brushes. Now, and these are the rainbow colored ones where the barrel is different colors so that you can easily see whether you're choosing a light green or a blue or a pink. And of course, because they're double-ended, you get double the brushes. So a 10 brush set actually gives you 20 brush ends, which I love because then you can use a light pink on one end and a darker pink on the other end, and it has a really handy effect of being able to swap out just by turning that brush around. Even though the barrels of these brushes now have color, they are exactly like the Shader Plus One brushes that have the white barrels. So these Plus One brushes versus the original shader brushes without the plus are easier or more quickly able to put down color. The original shader brushes would be a light coverage that you would layer up. But if you want to get more color down more quickly, you would go for the Plus One shader brushes. And you can see here, they absolutely do look amazing just sitting on your desk. Now let's move on to some of the items from the Better Together collection. This is the Postage Collage The Pond stencil set. You can see, hopefully, even with just the stencils, that this stencil set creates swans, lily pads, lilies. It's a really beautiful set. Next up, I have the Overlapping Hearts stencil set. This is 2 stencils. You could use them singly by themselves or over each other to create those overlapping hearts. Next, we have the Ponds with Lily Pads die set, and this has got those lily pads, lily flowers, those cattails, and just creates a nice scene. These are the Loving Swan dies. You can see there are little swan chicks as well as swan parents and some accessories to use with the swans as well. Next up is the Inquisitive Frogs Die set. This is such a fun, playful set. There are 2 frogs, a little puddle that they can be sitting in, a crown, a little bug, some tongues that you could have catching that bug, and some eyeballs for the frogs as well. This tiny little frog is free with purchase $25 and over at waffleflower.com with this coupon code that I'm going to share right now. I'll also be working with the Better Together sentiment stamp set and dies. You can buy these as a combo. You can buy the stamp set alone. It's a beautiful sentiment set. First, let's start by playing around with the new shader brushes and the Waffle Flower stencil. So this is the Overlapping Heart stencil, and around the inside of the stencil there is a line that shows you exactly where to line up the stencil on an A2 card. So perfect to use with the Waffle Flower grip mat because it holds the cardstock in place and the stencil in place. The stencil is slightly larger than an A2 card, making it easy to stick down to that grid mat. So those shader brushes make it really easy to get into small areas but put that color down quickly. You can see that I've used a couple of different colors on just that first stencil. Normally on a stencil like this, if you didn't have brushes like this, you would have to use a large brush and you would cover up the entire stencil with one color. But these shader brushes make it super simple to get into just the small little heart areas and color them in so that you can have multiple colors on your background, even with just 2 layers of stencils. So I'm using several colors again on the second stencil, and I'll just have a whole bunch of different color pink hearts overlapping each other. It makes for a really whimsical background. Here I've cut out the Postage Collage Die, and this matches up with all of their Postage Collage stencils, except for ones that are made specifically for, say, slimline or other things like that. But this is the A2 die that fits with the A2 stencils, and these are horizontal. So the first stencil, they'll tell you right on the stencil what you're stenciling, because sometimes it's not super obvious when you just look at one layer of a stencil, and they'll also give you a suggestion for color. This stencil was background, so it's skies and water, and I thought that that light blue was a really pretty color for all of the above. Now I'll place the second stencil down, and this one is the lily pads. I have one of the shader brushes. I have a light green on one end and a darker green on the other end. So you can see I'll start with the light green, and then I'll flip the brush around and I'll add a little hint of the dark green on one edge or the other of the lily pad. This just adds a little something extra to your stenciling. So these stencils create gorgeous colors and backgrounds and images just by adding a little bit of ink. But with these brushes, you can add a little bit more interest and a gradient of colors on even the tiniest of images, like those little lily pads. And you can see the frog in the middle at the bottom as well. Now I have the third stencil, which is some detailed layers. It's the swan's beaks and some little areas of the lily pads that are darker, some areas of the frog that are darker, and this last layer is also a details layer. So it'll tell you maybe yellow here or a different color black here, and you can of course do any color you want, but if you're struggling, they at least give you a little guidance as to what you're coloring in and what colors might look good in that area. Just check that out. I can't even believe sometimes that I am creating this card because the stencil does all the work. Now I'll use those shader +1 brushes to add a little bit of ink to die cut. So I like to die cut out of colorful cardstock because then all I need to do is add a little hint of color, and it adds again that little bit of interest, that little extra special spot that just makes it look like you put in a little bit more care and gives those cute little frogs a darker belly, gives a little hint of a shadow to the outside of the puddle. These brushes are perfect for that. Again, they do put down a decent amount of color, so you want to be maybe a little lighter handed. If you do use the original shader brushes, they will put down less color if you're just going for a lighter look. Now let's combine the new shader brushes with the new items from the Better Together release to create some cards. For this first card, I did want to use the overlapping hearts, but I wanted to show you if you just use one stencil, you can still create a really pretty background. So I'm putting one of the stencils from the overlapping hearts down on an A2 piece of white cardstock, and I have it on my grip mat to hold it in place. Now I have one of the larger blending brushes from Waffle Flower. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm barely touching the paper and I'm moving quickly because what I really want is a very light, subtle background. So as in comparison to that bunch of bright pinks that I did in the beginning, this one is a much lighter, more subtle background, and I thought it would be perfect for these frogs. Now the frogs have those little eye dies that you can cut out, and then you can use the center of those, so cut them out of white and black, and then you can use the outside white and then that little kind of upside down or the frown look inside the eye for the black. And it just gives you, again, just a really more detailed look to be able to do that. You see the frog's belly that I also use the shader brushes on to make a darker color. You can also snip the sides of the belly. They just connect at the sides there, and then cut out another piece of cardstock of the frog and then adhere that into place. So there's several ways that you can add more interest to your die cuts, especially where waffle flower is concerned. They make it really easy to layer different colors of cardstock on top of each other or to snip out of place the bellies and things like that so that you can add a little more detail. I've also die cut out a little crown for one of the frogs in gold mirror cardstock. For those cat's tails, they did have two layers. They had the greenery layer that's at the bottom, and then you can cut out another color. I saw it was like, usually they're kind of a light brown, so I cut that out and layered those on top. Here's the puddle that I had inked up a little bit. I'm gonna add a little bit of liquid adhesive to the back of the nose of the frogs and then just put a tiny little strip of black cardstock so that that little nose looks like it's black from the back. And then I'll add some of the Spellbinders foam squares. These are the lower dimension foam squares for this first large frog. And then I'll use the higher dimension foam squares for the second one. I want that one to be closer to the viewer, so that's why it is popped up a little bit more. I'll add those cat's tails on one side, and then I'm creating a lily. Now you can use all of these individual lily die cuts as different flowers, or you can layer them on top of each other. I think that creates that really kind of layered look of a lily, and I'll place that right on a little lily pad as well. Here's a sentiment from that Better Together stamp set. I love the script and straight together, those two fonts. I think they look really amazing together. I'll hold that die in place with a little bit of tape and run it through my die cut machine. That allows me to pop it up, which I absolutely love sentiments that are popped up if there are elements on the card that are popped up as well. This is such a fun card to put together. It's so unique looking with those frogs. I absolutely love them. They're so cute. So for the swan postage collage that we created, I did want to add some postage stamps from the original postage stamp set. I'm not stamping on every single image, but I am adding things like first class mail and a little price like 9 cents. I also am cutting out the Miss You sentiment from the Better Together stamp set, and I'll cut it out with the dies. It creates 2 separate words for this one. I have the Postage Collage Blocks die, which creates that sort of grid in the background there, and that will create a little margin around the postage collage itself. And I've adhered the blocks down to an A2 piece of colorful cardstock. Then I'll pop up the postage collage, and you can see just a little hint of that color from the postage collage blocks. So it's a nice thing to have if you want to add a little bit something extra around that postage collage. Then I'll add liquid adhesive to the Miss You sentiment and put that right in the center of the postage collage, so it sort of looks like it fits right in. It's a great size for this stenciled set. And how amazing does that stencil set come out when all you do is add a little bit of ink? For this card, I'll grab the background that I created with the overlapping hearts and all those pink hearts. Then I have the Love Swans die set, and there's some accessories to create the face, the part of the face on the swan that's black, and then also the little beak. So I'm doing that on a small swan and a large swan. And I've cut out another layer of each of those swans so I can layer up 2 pieces of cardstock on top of each other. Sometimes I really just like that look with die cuts. It's just a little bit thicker than just one piece of cardstock, and I don't know, it adds some stability to it, helps it stand out a little bit more from the background as well, and those are easy to line up. I'll also use a piece of vellum that I cut out with the oversized postage die from Waffle Flower that will tone down the hearts a little bit where the swans are going to be so that you see them a little bit more. And if you place them next to each other like that, you can see how their necks will create a heart shape, and that's just so sweet. Also, I've stamped and die cut the Better Together sentiment from the Better Together stamps and dies. I'll flip over that vellum once I've adhered my swans down and place some liquid adhesive just behind the swans. This way I know you won't be able to see that adhesive from the front. So I'll place that down, and then I'll place a little bit of liquid adhesive behind the Better Together sentiment. I love that it's all in one die cut. Just makes it really easy to line up. Sometimes when it's 2 words, I have trouble lining those up. And then I'll just flip up that vellum so I can put a little bit more adhesive behind the sentiment as well and hide that there. Such a fun card to put together. Again, swans are so different than anything I've seen out there, and so all of these cards just really have a unique statement to them. If you've used the Waffle Flower shader brushes before, you know exactly what I mean. If you haven't, I highly recommend giving them a try. If you're having trouble filling in small areas of stencils and getting a nice smooth look to that blend. But I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on this latest release. Let me know in the comments below. As always, I want to thank you so much for stopping by and spending time with me today. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you again soon. Really, airplane? Read the room. One more time. Oh, okay, wait. One more time.